Okay, next up should be Ulrich and myself on JavaScript variables. I thought about saying that this is not rocket science, but after yesterday, I'm not sure you're going to believe me. So we have prepared, I think, in total 4 real examples. And then the 5th one is if we still have time, and some of you have already seen that, and it's more of a demo anyway. But we have 4 things about variables. I think my 2 tips and tricks that I have here are more about using JavaScript in specific ways to accomplish something, and Ulrich has the real tips and tricks, and the real tricks, I think. But we'll see. So, first example is something with penguins. This is a document that has a Mediabox. It's very surprising, I know, but this document has a Mediabox and a Trimbox, as you can see, and what you want to know is whether the Trimbox is centered in the Mediabox. And that should be really simple. Why? Well, there is a condition in pdfToolbox that you can use for that. Unfortunately, the condition that you see there doesn't allow you to specify a tolerance in there. So if this thing is off by even a point, you're going to get an error out of that. And a customer asked us, can we come up with a check where we can specify what the difference can be in terms of being centered. So you can't use this condition. The only thing that you can do in that case, if you're not using one of the conditions that is built in, is you can try to create your own kind of condition. And in this case, you can do that using JavaScript. If you think about what it means to be centered, it means that the distance you have on the left-hand side between the Mediabox and the Trimbox is equal to the distance you have on the right-hand side. That's the definition of being centered. And there is a condition in pdfToolbox that is called horizontal offset of Trimbox from Mediabox, right? That's the left-hand side of the equation. And that compares it to a number. And for the number, we can use a JavaScript that tests the right-hand side. And that's actually what you need, right? Yes, it's very easy when I say that. It was a little bit more difficult to come up with the principle in the first place. But so that's what we're doing here. And you'll see that there are a number of pitfalls in this. But at first glance, this sounds like a really good idea. So let me show you what that means. I have this, somewhere I have a document. So this is this document that I was talking about, and if I scroll through this, all of these things have the same, are nicely centered. If I run this with, so checks, if I use the standard one, I actually get an error on all pages, which is not what we want in this particular case. So this is the built-in condition in pdfToolbox. So what I've done is I've written another one, and I can run that, and I don't get any errors. Now it's easy to write a check that doesn't show any errors, of course, but I will prove to you that I've done something that goes in the direction of solving this. This is what I was talking about. So you have the horizontal offset condition, and then you also have the vertical offset condition, of course, because you want to know that it's centered horizontally and vertically. And then there are 2 script variables that do some calculation. And I can show you what those do as well. They're very simple. I get the Mediabox and the Trimbox. Can you spot where it's going to go wrong already? And then I calculate what the distance is between the Mediabox and the Trimbox on the right-hand side. And that is then going to be compared to the left-hand side. Now, Really cool idea. However, famous last words. Here we go. No, we don't. This is what I want. I'm going to close this one for now. So this is the same document, and I'm using a touchpad here, so it's kind of difficult to go to one page, but this is a centered document. So the Trimbox is centered on every page. However, as you can see, for page number 4, the Mediabox is bigger than on the other pages. Trimbox has the same size, it's still centered, but the configuration of the page boxes is kind of different. So let me run my check again. And unfortunately, it tells me that there is a problem on page 4. And you always have problems with these creative types, but why is there a problem? Why is this giving an error? You've seen all the evidence. No? Let me show you this check that I do again. So this is the check that I write. It says horizontal offset of Trimbox, and then it calculates what happens on the right-hand side. However, if you want to calculate what happens on the right-hand side, you have to pick which page you get that information for. So I'm taking this from page number 1. I'm getting the Mediabox from page 1 and the Mediabox from the Trimbox from page 1, and I'm calculating what the offset or what the distance is between trim and media on page 1 in this document. And then I'm comparing that in this condition. But this condition runs over all pages. So for each page in the document, it will compare the distance on the right-hand side for page 1 with what it finds on the left-hand side on the page itself. And that doesn't work for this page. The left-hand side offset is bigger on this page. I'm still comparing it to what I had on page 1, which is smaller, so it doesn't work. That's a limitation of what you have in checks. I don't know how to solve this, or I would ask for, I would enter a feature request, but I don't know how to solve it. If you run a check like this, the variables that you use in the check are calculated once, and then they are used for each page, right? And that's not always what you want. So is there a solution for that? Yes, there is, but you're not going to like it. So the solution is to use this process plan. And process plan tells me there is no error. It's correct. You can already see what it does. It runs through all pages of the document, and for each page, it does a check. And this time, it does the check correctly. Now, how is that possible? Well, it's possible because you can make process plans that loop, which is a very interesting concept. I've looked for a long time for a reason to implement this, and I finally found one. So what it does is it has a little script at the beginning, and that little script just says, oh, the page we're looking at is page 1, right? That's the only thing it does. And then I have an adjusted check, and I actually need a separate one for horizontal and vertical, because you can't combine and or in a check today. That might change at some point, you never know. But I had to split it up in a check for horizontal and vertical. But now this check looks a little bit different. Now it says, get the Mediabox for the page I am currently checking. The reason that there is a -1 here is because one thing is 0 based, the other based is 1 based. I mean, I fixed this like an hour ago because it wasn't working. But it does the same thing, except that it does it for that particular page that we are checking right now. And then the result that you get is used to determine what happens. And in order to make sure that this check here only checks a particular page, I also have a condition on sequential page number. So I say right now I'm only checking page indicated by this variable. Does that make sense? I told you were not going to like it, but it does work. Yeah? Okay. I'll prepare this for you, Ulrich. There we go. Yes. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to talk not about tips and tricks for variables directly, but a little bit about editing variables and how to improve the experience during editing. So we already saw this variable editor used by David, and he had to zoom in order to make it bigger so that we can read it better. And there are some other problems with the variable editor. So this is a window you probably know about. It has a very small text edit field where you can enter your scripts, and once the scripts become more complex or complicated, it is not fun to use this little editor. You don't have search and replace, you don't have syntax highlighting, you can't make the text bigger or smaller, you have no line numbers and so on. While you still get, for example, line numbers in the results, in the error messages, you don't have line numbers in the text edit field, so that's not very good. So one obvious solution would be to implement a full-fledged JavaScript editor with all these features in this dialog, which may happen sometime, I don't know. But what we have implemented instead so far, because we wanted to offer something to improve the experience, is to allow for external editors. So I skipped one step in my slide. I'm not so experienced in presenting. So, okay, one solution to use another editor would be to just select all the script text in this little text field, copy it to your preferred editor, do the editing there, write script, have syntax highlighting, for example, if you set it up correctly. Adjust the script, copy the text in your text editor, paste it into the variables dialog, and probably, most probably you have still an error in your script, then you have to start over with step 1 again. So that's not a very nice experience. So we decided to add this little thingy on the right side of the dialog. So it's the edit button, and what it does, it just starts a text editor. So that would look like this, for example. So if you have a complex script, you see this, for example, this is opening the script text in Sublime in this example. Sublime is a very nice text editor for JavaScript. You have syntax highlighting. It does some error checking on the syntax as well during typing, so it will highlight errors in unbalanced brackets, for example, or unterminated string literals and such things. It has line numbering. You can make the text, adjust the text size, and so on. Search and replace, such things. Okay, how does it work? What pdfToolbox is doing, if you click on this little button, is just to grab the text from the edit text field in the editor, save it to a temporary file with proper line, the file extension. File extension in this case is a JS for JavaScript, and then it will just issue the command to or tell the operating system to open this temporary file in the default editor
for editing. And so you can set it up to your liking. So you can set it up on Mac OS X and as well on Windows. You can assign a default editor for JS files, and it will just open this editor with this temporary file. And then there's obviously the problem, how does the text go back into the variable editor? And this is solved in the way that whenever you save the file in the external text editor, the pdfToolbox will pick up the changes that will be notified about these changes and will pull just the changed JavaScript into the text editor field. There's one thing that's a little bit not so nice, and that is that once you have opened the external editor, the edit field in the variables editor will be disabled, just in order to prevent the whole process from conflicts between the external editor and the editor in pdfToolbox. So that's a little bit strange in the beginning, because once you have opened the JavaScript in the external editor, you can't go back to the variables editor and edit there. But I think I will just show how it works. If I find the escape button, yes, found it. Okay, I will switch to pdfToolbox, and I have prepared a process plan that I will probably show in a later session. I'm just using it here because it contains some more complicated scripts. So as you can see, it has quite some lines of code inside, and it's not really fun to edit it in this text editor. You also see that for example, that the formatting is not perfect in this editor because it's not using a fixed width font in this case. Okay, so I will just go here, click this little button, and I hope I have the correct editor assigned to it. Yes, it works. So it looks differently, but that's because David has another theme added to his editor, but that's okay. So now we are in Sublime as well, and we can use all the we see all the syntax highlighting. So, for example, keywords are black here in this color scheme. Variables or identifiers are blue, and number literals or literals are red, for example. So if I, for example, remove the quotation mark, I get an error indication here as well. So it's doing some basic syntax highlighting and error checking. Or if I remove a bracket, that should be there. It's not getting this error, so don't know why. How do I undo this? Okay, so, but what happened to the variables editor? Sorry, if I go back to pdfToolbox, you see it's disabled now. I think I can still scroll.
If you close this one now, while the other one is still open, does it break the link in it? Or?
Yes. It will reuse the same file name if you reopen it. So there's a chance that depends on the editor you're using. So if the external editor allows for reopening the same file, so if it gets an open event and the file is already open,
switches to that one.
And it's a decision of the external editor whether it uses its content or whether it reloads the content from the file.
With
so
it works.
Yes.
You can leave it open, close the file, open it again, and then you can go on editing with the open
Yeah.
No, I haven't worked yet with any other.
Yeah. Yeah, because Toolbox will overwrite the file if you reopen the dialog, obviously. So the temp file is overwritten, and if the editor, for example, I know text wrangler will notice if the new version of the local file is on the file system, and it will reload it to the editor, but others will not. So probably so you can decide by assigning the correct editor for this one. Okay, so this is disabled. It's working differently. Okay. So, but what is about you obviously lose some functionality if you do it this way. So that's a downside of using an external editor, is that you can't use these help menus here. I even can't show it because the text edit field is disabled, so I will just reopen it. I don't know whether you know about these info buttons. So in this info button you can, for example, insert JavaScript JavaScript objects, or you can insert variables that are present in your library, or you can insert JavaScript snippets that in your that you have in your configuration, and that is something that you can't use in the external editor. So that's a downside of it. We're currently looking, or I'm looking into a way to add some of this as extensions to Sublime, for example. But I'm not sure whether it will be possible to add something like auto-completion in Sublime for during entering of variables. So insert variables, for example, will just show you a list of all variables in your library, and you can just select one here and click on insert, and it will insert this variable into somewhere I didn't want it to go. Okay, but I can undo. At least I can undo in this editor. Okay, so that's one problem. The other problem is that you don't have direct access to the results. If you choose to show the evaluation results during editing, you can see that in the external editor, obviously. But what works is that if I go to the external editor again, okay, has changed. It's asking, so no. Okay, the scroll pad is working differently than on my machines. Okay, if I, for example, just change the return value of the script to 5. Oh no, that's not 5. 5. I would like to see the new. Okay. I think I just made a mistake again. So okay. That's a different keyboard layout. So I wanted to select all the text, and I quit the external editor instead. So if I just delete everything and say, okay, I want just to return 5 from the script, and if I save the script and go back into the editor, it will pick up the content of the external edited JavaScript file and will put it into this text field, and it will evaluate it again. So at least the show evaluation results option works fine with this. Yeah, questions?
Just a feature request to make the console area a little bit larger, because if I do debug and I have a lot of console log commands, then this little window down here area becomes very populated.
Okay, so yes, I think one solution would be to add a stretchy thing in between the two areas, and yeah, okay, good idea. Mm-hmm. Are you using already external editors in your? I know that you are doing, but anybody else? Let's give it a try. Okay. Should cancel.
Okay.
And go back to presentation.
Thank you. So, one other example, something that that we've actually gotten a number of times as a question is, how can you look at a document and make sure that there is nothing too close to an edge of the page? And you can do this using the distance between objects and the Trimbox, for example, but that isn't always completely accurate. If you have an object that is white, for example, white text on a white background, you might not care because it's not going to put down any ink anyway. So the question is there a way to do this better? There's actually multiple ways to do it better, but what is always difficult is checking that you're doing the right thing, because it's very difficult to judge how close something actually is to the edge of the page. So I've implemented a two-step solution. The first thing is make a colored, draw a line around the Trimbox so that you can see what the safety margin is that you want and judge whether a document is good or not good visually, because you need that in order to check your own pre-flight check that you're writing. And then the second step would be writing the actual pre-flight check that does a correct determination if an object is too close to the Trimbox or not. And the best way to, actually the only way I think that I found that reliably does that today is using ink coverage. What do you mean ink coverage? Well, I'll show you. So I have to go back to my library here for a second, and we don't need you anymore. Thank you very much. And I have two nice documents. So this one is without the footnote, and this one is with the footnote. And the first thing I can do is to show you my way of checking is I have this little fix-up that will color the margins of the page. I can specify how many millimeters I want to visualize. So if I run that, it shows me exactly what the safety margin is in a visual way. So now I can judge whether any objects on the page actually come close enough, which is not the case here, but on the second document that has that footnote, you would see that it would actually color the footnote as well. So that is well within that safety margin. And you don't have to do this step, but if you want to keep your sanity, it's actually nice to do it, because you will run this and then a document will say that something is too close and you will not believe that, and this way you have a visual way of checking it. So that's one. And then second is the actual check. And that is object too close to the Trimbox, and let me run that. And I've also made it with a variable, so it can be reused. That's easy. So it says no problems for this, and hopefully it now says that there is a problem on this one. And it tells me that something is too close to the edge of the page here. Now, how does this work? As said, it uses JavaScript. It's a little bit complicated because there is no easy way to specify that border that we want to check the ink coverage in, right? There is no condition in pdfToolbox that easily allows you to do that. It is possible to say effective ink coverage in custom area, but effective ink coverage in custom area only allows you to specify x and y of where this begins. It's a rectangle. It's x and y, so the origin of the rectangle, and then the width and the height. And that's not that border that we want. So if we want to do this with JavaScript, we need this condition 4 times. We need it for the bottom of the page, the left-hand side, the right-hand side, and the top of the page. So we have 4 times the same condition in here. That condition, however, is not simple either. I don't know what the width is. The width is supposed to be the width of the Trimbox, or the width of, well, in this case, the Trimbox. So I can't predict what that is going to be, and I don't want to make it fixed. So I need some JavaScript to figure out what the width is going to be. So this is the first check where I say bottom left corner, that's 0, 0. Then the whole width of the Trimbox, and the height in this case is the safety margin that I want to check. And that area and how you calculate the area is different for the bottom, the top, the left, and the right. But with a little bit of JavaScript, and this one is the easy one. So if I show you what that does, it's relatively easy. I look at the Trimbox right and the Trimbox left, and that gives me the width of the Trimbox. And then I do something else. I don't recall why. Probably because I have set it. I have it set in millimeters. So this is in points, and my condition is in millimeter here. And I want it to be in millimeters because I want to specify this this margin, the safety margin, in millimeters. So in my JavaScript, I have to convert from point to millimeter, and you do that by doing what I just showed. And you do that for each side. You can see that the conditions, so the parameters rather, are a little bit different for each side. Trust me, it's right. And so in the end, you need, I think, 3 different variables to calculate this. And pdfToolbox will check each of these little areas and will check whether there is anything in there. So you could take that one step further, but then it becomes really, really complicated. We had a request from someone who said, I want to check the outside, I don't want to check the inside margin. You can do that, of course. You just don't check the left-hand side for odd pages and the right-hand side for even pages. But it becomes a little bit difficult because you can't combine and or. So you end up with 4 different checks instead of, or 8 different checks. I don't know anymore. I've done it. So that becomes more complicated. Also, you can see that this suffers from the same problem as my previous example. Every page might have a different Trimbox. So if you want to do it really well on a document that has different page sizes, you need your looping process plan again. Yeah? Robert?
At the moment, your 4 areas overlap in the corners.
Yes.
So you get twice the same error if an element is in the corner.
Yes, you're right. And well, you only get one error. The check either gives an error or not. So it doesn't matter, but you're right. And from I don't know whether it would make a real difference from a performance point of view, but we could probably shave off a couple of milliseconds. But
So it depends on the resolution.
Yes. But you're right, they overlap. And they could, of course, be adjusted. It's easy enough to say, to take that margin into account. But you need one more JavaScript variable if you do it that way. So I chose not to.
Maybe a question, since only a handful of people are able to create such a check, is there a plan on pdfToolbox to provide this as a predefined check where an end user just enters his safety margin and can say, do I want to check inside, outside, and all the calculation that's done, image calculation and comparison has been done in the check itself.
It's a very good idea.
I've been playing around with that now since the last 3 hackathons.
Mm-hmm.
And we always ran the same situations that we had. And the only solution I would see for the end user is
it's a condition that does it. Yeah.
Check file.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be a really good idea.
But it's a nice coding exercise. That is.
Yes. But like I said, it's not perfect, because if pages have different sizes, it wouldn't work. You would need to put it in a process plan, as I did in the first exercise, but then it would work. You can actually make it work in the general case, but it requires a process plan and quite a bit of processing.
And also the reporting would not be the ideal process plans because you get
Correct.
all the results.
Correct. Okay.
Okay, so next example is about using variables or using checks together with variables in order to have some to carry over information from the check to a later step in an imposition, for example. So I just created this example. I don't think it's very useful, but it's easy to understand. So that's why I choose this problem. So I have a document, or I want to create an imposition run list that only places pages where that have specific properties. And in this example, just because you can just understand it very well, because it's so visual, if there's something at the edge of the document, some page content, I want to have this file, and if it does not have something at the edge, I don't want to have this page on my sheet. And internally, it's using the very same property David just used, so I don't have to explain it again. I just look for the ink coverage at the edge of the document and create a check for that. So I get a hit for every page that has something at the border. And then I want to use the information from this check in the later step. And for this purpose, I can use, to make it easier, I can use a custom ID for this check. So that's this little text field that is new since, I think it's new in pdfTool 9.4.
Yeah.
So that's a little text field where you can enter your own ID for this check. And this ID will be present in the results. So it's an easy way to identify checks or results, checks in results. So at the end, I want to pick all the pages from the document that have pre-flight hit or a hit from a pre-flight check with this custom ID. Okay. Then, on the next step, I need to use a variable, or a JavaScript variable, to retrieve the page numbers from the pre-flight result of the check step. So, and that can be done by accessing the information in the result. So we have the app.doc.result property in the JavaScript variables we maintain during processing the file in the process plan. And in the result property, there's a checks array, and you can filter this array by using the custom ID. So that's value.customID. I think we can provide this. Oh, we already, time is over in 5 minutes. So okay. So in my script here, there's some more functions inside the script. I've just collapsed them because it's too complicated to explain everything. But in the end, the important part is here. So that's the check ID I entered in the check, and I can pick up the page number by custom ID inside this with this JavaScript. I think we can provide this JavaScript as an example for you, so that you can follow the steps by yourself. So then in the run list of the imposition engine, I can pick up this variable I just created in the JavaScript I showed earlier. I can pull over the result from the check into my run list, and I have a run list variable containing an array of pages that I want to use, comma separated, and then I can use a command in my run list that just picks up or searches this string containing all the pages that I want to have and place these pages on the page. So I don't know. Okay, so that's how the process plan looks like in the end. I have as a first step the check that just does the ink coverage checking at the borders of the pages and create this prefetch result. It writes the result in the app doc results array. Then I have the JavaScript variable that retrieves this information from the app doc result variable and converts it into a format that the imposition run list understands, and then as a last step I have this imposition action that just takes this information. And probably I can, so I've, no, it's not so easy. It's huge, the trackpad. Okay. Can you open this file for me?
Of course. Yeah, you can't press it too hard. It also has a force touch.
Okay, so
it's very annoying in the
too modern for me.
Yeah, it's very annoying in the beginning.
Okay, so I have a page that has alternating borders or not borders. So and my process plan should pick only the pages with the border and place it on the sheet. So I will try. Okay, so I end up with a file that only contains the pages with the borders, and that was determined. The pages were selected by a pre-flat check, and the result was converted with the JavaScript to the imposition run list, and the imposition run list just only took over the pages defined by that check. So. Okay. Probably okay. You have a minute left.
Probably run out of time, which is okay. I have a whole minute. So actually, the only thing I wanted to do, because it would take too much time to go into too much details anyway, is to show you one thing, and then. Some of you have already seen this, I think. If not, and you're interested, I can definitely explain. But I will show this this file, and then I have a little process plan here that when I run it, gives me a choice. So I have a number of different finishing options for a banner, and I could say maybe something with grommets, and then it will finish that file for me using what I selected as options. So in this case, I get grommets at the bottom and the top and so on. If I do this again, and I choose something else, you'll see that the finishing is very different. In this case, I don't have grommets, the lines are a little bit different, the distances are probably different. So you can see on the right hand side that it goes through quite a number of different steps, and it's simply the technique that is used here that I wanted to show. what this process plan does is it starts with a simple variable. A simple variable, but a variable where I specify choices. So the user has to choose one of the options listed here. And this is a variable, which means that it is available to the next step in the process plan. And the next step in the process plan is a little script for which you can use an external script editor because it's pretty long. It's a little script that says, using this variable that the user just selected, that's not what I wanted, there. So this is the choice that the user made. Using that variable, go look in a folder on this machine and look for a JSON file. And that JSON file contains all of the variables, all of the finishing options that we want. And then the rest of the script simply reads that JSON file and does some calculations, does some determination based on the content of that JSON file to figure out what needs to happen to this banner. And then the next script in here is the one that actually does the work. And that one looks at all the variables that were set up before, that were read from the JSON, and then it will do a whole bunch of calculations. It sets other variables, and so on and so on. And the process plan that follows uses those to determine whether certain things need to run or not. So for example, there is a variable that is called JSON create whitespace that was set. The default is 0, which means no, don't do that. But the script at the beginning could change it to 1, which means do that. And based on that variable, this fix-up to add whitespace will be executed or not. And that's the way the whole process plan works. So it determines whether you need whitespace, whether you need bleed, and it will activate those fix-ups depending on whether they are needed or not. And in the end, you have one process plan that allows the user to pick what they want and then does all of the different preparations. And the cool thing is that you don't have to modify the script every time that you have a new combination, a new product that has different combinations. You simply create a new JSON file, put the options in there, and you're home free, right? This could be used in other ways. So this is the same process plan, but in this case, things are not read from a JSON file. They're just simply set up in JavaScript, and the rest is all the same. It would be very nice if we could use process plans and process plans for this one. Then I wouldn't have to repeat the major part of that, but feature request. And I think that ends our session and our